Before you immerse yourself in this deeply moving narrative of forbidden love, family betrayal, and astonishing revelations, remember to subscribe to our channel, like this video, and comment below with your thoughts. Your support helps us share more heartwarming stories. The Orphan, the Heir, and the Unveiled Secret. A love story against all odds. She was humiliated, expelled, threatened with losing the child she carried. His wealthy family had deemed her unworthy, a mere orphan florist. But destiny had a cruel twist in store, and years later, when a hidden door finally opened, no one could imagine the secret it concealed. Prepare yourself for a story of forbidden love, shattering family betrayal, and a reversal of fortune that will leave you breathless. This is a tale where a father's deep-seated anger meets a daughter's unwavering strength, revealing a truth that will bring an empire to its knees. A dream-shattered Heir Harris was living the most magical moment of her life. After a childhood marked by abandonment, loneliness, and rejection, and a youth full of hardship and silent battles, she finally felt embraced by happiness. It was as if the universe, after so long silent, had finally whispered in her ear that she deserved to be loved. David Stone's marriage proposal had just happened. The ring still glittered on her finger like a symbol, not just of love, but of overcoming adversity. At that moment, Julia was no longer the forgotten orphan, nor the young woman who sold flowers on street corners to survive. Now, she was the fiancée of the man she loved, who swore to love her above all else. But what should have been a night of celebration, of plans for the future, of smiles and hugs, quickly transformed into a bitter nightmare. The sharp voice of Eleanor Stone, David's mother, who until then had remained silent, echoed through the ballroom like a blow. "Son, you are making a terrible mistake. That woman is no good for you. She's just an orphan, a nameless florist, with no history, absolutely nothing. A hungry beggar." The silence that followed was suffocating. Julia froze, her heart clenching. She couldn't respond or move a muscle, and before she could recover from the shock, another voice, deeper, colder, and even crueler, filled the room. "I think your mother is right, David." David slowly turned, his eyes blazing with the fury of someone carrying years of accumulated frustration. He faced his father, Robert Stone, his chest puffed out in indignation. "You two have crossed the line," he said, his voice firm, vibrating. "I'm not a game, a chess piece on your vanity board. How many times do I have to repeat myself? I'm not going to marry someone you chose for convenience. This isn't love, it's a bargain. The women you introduced me to one by one were cold, uninteresting, incapable of seeing me as a man. All they wanted was more money, more status, more power." He then held Julia's hand firmly, as if to protect her with his touch. "Julia didn't know who I was," he shouted. "She fell in love with me when she thought I was just a gardener. That's the man she met. That's the man she loved. Nameless, fortuneless, without pretense." Eleanor burst into mocking laughter, cruel as daggers. "My son, my sweet son, how can you be so naive?" she sneered. "That girl with her poor eyes and sad story got her hooks into you, didn't she? Do you really think she didn't know? Remember, David, that's not love. It's a scheme, a setup. Stop it!" David thundered, his voice echoing like thunder. "You don't know the woman by my side. And apparently, you don't even know Mama. I'm tired of living under your empty expectations." Eleanor didn't back down. She was willing to do anything to prevent that marriage. Robert demanded, "I want you to disinherit him. Take away his title as company president. If he insists on this charade, Then let him pay the price for his mistakes." His father hesitated. He ran a hand over his forehead, took a deep breath, and replied with regret, "Eleanor, you know I can't. My father left a will. David inherited control of the company by my grandfather's direct wish. It's all official. Not even I can change that." "Then we're stuck with this?" she screamed, indignant. "Will we have to swallow this beggar in our family?" "Unfortunately, yes," Robert murmured in defeat. Julia was static. The words, the insults, the stares, everything was like acid rain on her soul. Tears streamed down her face without permission. Her chest ached as if it were being crushed. She wanted to run, to disappear, to become invisible again. But David held her, looked into her eyes with tenacity, and whispered, "Come with me. I won't let this destroy us." Without another word, he took her hand, and they left the mansion, while the shouts of his parents faded behind them, distant, empty. Julia didn't know what the future held. She only knew that at that moment, even with a broken heart, she was willing to fight for the love she had finally found. What do you think is the true reason behind Eleanor and Robert Stone's fierce opposition to David and Julia's marriage? How does David's loyalty to Julia challenge his family's authority and values? Share your insights in the comments. A tragic twist and a glimpse of the past. The silence inside the car was dense. The tension between David and Julia was like a heavy snowfall. David drove with his eyes fixed on the road, but his heart raced, distraught, consumed by a rage he couldn't hide. His mind burned with his parents' words, those poisonous accusations, the disdain, the humiliation. On the other hand, Julia, still in shock, tightly held his hand, trying to find some stability in that emotional storm. But there was no time for comfort, no space for sweet words or reconciliation. It all happened too fast. A truck suddenly appeared on the curve of the road. David tried to swerve, pulling the steering wheel hard to the side. The car spun, lost control, and before impact, David instinctively and desperately turned his body. He wrapped his arms around Julia, covering her completely, as if he could protect with his own body everything she represented: love, hope, future. The car violently collided with a leafy tree, and the sound of twisted metal mingled with the terrifying silence that followed. Darkness. Hours later, Julia woke up to the glare of cold hospital lights, the sounds of machines, the smell of antiseptic, the white sheets. Everything was strange and terrifying. She felt pain, yes, but what hurt most was the uncertainty. "Where's David?" she asked urgently, her voice trembling. "How is he? Is he okay?" Tears were already streaming down her face when a nurse approached with a worried look. "Calm down, miss. Please, try to calm down. I need to see David," she insisted, desperation growing. The nurse gently grasped her hand. "Julia, you need to calm down. Otherwise, you could harm your baby." Julia froze. "But baby?" she murmured, disbelieving. "Yes, you're pregnant," the nurse said gently. "We've just confirmed it, and it's essential that you remain calm for the sake of the child." The words hit her like lightning. Pregnant. She was pregnant with David's child. Her heart swelled. Unexpected joy mixed with fear. But desperation returned with even greater force. "And David, for God's sake, tell me how he is." "He's unconscious," the nurse replied. "But he's being cared for by the best specialists. At the moment, there's nothing you can do. Just take care of yourself and your baby." Julia closed her eyes, trying to hold back the tears. But the pain was too strong. Memories began to flood her mind. Sweet memories of a time when everything seemed simpler, lighter. The day she met David was vivid, as if it had happened yesterday. She was at the flower shop where she worked, arranging bouquets and singing. She sang a soft song, almost a whisper from the soul. Singing was the only thing that made her forget the world outside. It was then that an elegant man in a dark suit appeared, standing in the doorway as if time had frozen, just to watch her. "Good afternoon. Do you have rose seeds?" he asked with a shy smile. Julia looked at him strangely. His clothes didn't match the request. "Seeds? To plant?" "Yes, I take care of a garden at a very rich lady's house." She looked at his impeccable suit and couldn't resist the question. "Since when do gardeners dress like that?" David laughed, a little embarrassed. "Oh, that. I just came from a friend's wedding. I was a groomsman. I don't even know how I'm going to pay for this suit." She believed him. How could she not believe him? He seemed so genuine, so simple. From that day on, David started frequenting the flower shop. His smile found a place in her heart, and casual encounters turned into long conversations, shy laughs, and finally, love. Only after a long time did he reveal his true identity. David Stone, president of the powerful Stone Corporation. Julia wanted to run away. She was afraid of not belonging in that world, afraid of suffering, of being discarded. But he convinced her that their love was stronger than any fortune, and now he was between life and death, because of an accident caused by the misfortune of his own family. Julia's crying was interrupted by a sharp voice, cold as ice. "Ah, so it's true. You're pregnant?" She slowly opened her eyes, her body already on alert. In front of her, standing, arms crossed and eyes gleaming with contempt, was Eleanor. Julia automatically brought her hands to her belly, as if instinctively protecting the life growing inside her. "Mrs. Stone," she murmured, her voice failing. Eleanor didn't respond. She took a step forward and, brutally, snatched the ultrasound confirmation from Julia's hands. "You little whore! You miserable gold digger!" she spat with hatred. "Did you think you could trap my son with a child? You're worthless!" Julia felt her body tremble. She couldn't react. She was weak, vulnerable, but her gaze filled with tears and courage. "I never wanted anything from you. I just wanted to live this love in peace." Eleanor approached, narrowing the distance between them even further, and whispered with venom on her lips. "Either you disappear, or you terminate this pregnancy, because I swear you'll never see David again." The silence that followed was overwhelming, and suddenly, a slap echoed through the room like unexpected thunder. The blow came so fast, so brutal, that Julia had no time to react. Her head snapped to the side, and pain spread like fire across her face, making her eyes water instantly. The air seemed to be sucked from her lungs, and for a few seconds, she was paralyzed, trying to understand what had just happened. In front of her was Eleanor, the woman who should one day be her mother-in-law, but who now revealed herself as a nightmare in flesh and blood. Her face was distorted by such deep hatred that it seemed to have turned to poison. Her eyes cold as steel, her lips trembling with fury, and the tone of her voice cutting the air like sharp blades. "How dare you!" she shrieked, each word impregnated with contempt. "How dare a hussy like you get my son pregnant? You've already done too much harm to our family," she railed, approaching even closer, like a storm about to break. "Now you want to use this inhuman child to tie David down? Marry him? Never! You're delusional. I'll never be a grandmother to a bastard sired by a cheap opportunist." Julia instinctively brought her hands to her belly, trying to protect herself with what little strength she had left. She recoiled a step, feeling cornered, and her voice came out in a broken whisper. "No, you can't be so cruel. This baby is your grandchild. It carries the blood of the Stone family." But Eleanor didn't blink. Her face hardened even more. "Whore! She spat with contempt. "You are not fit to bring a child of our lineage into the world. Your dirty blood doesn't deserve to mix with ours. You're just a distraction, a stain that David will still erase from his life." Julia felt the world spin. Tears streamed down her bruised face, mixed with shame, helplessness, fear. But within her, a more powerful instinct began to emerge, that of a mother. She straightened her body with difficulty and spoke with a trembling but firm voice. "All right, I promise to disappear from David's life, but—" She swallowed hard, her hands on her belly. "I'm not going to kill my child. I won't. This crime is because of your hatred." Eleanor's eyes narrowed, as if those words were a personal insult. She stepped forward, pointing a finger violently, her teeth clenched. "Don't you understand? From today, you no longer exist for David. You will disappear. You will disappear. And if you ever dare to reappear, I swear that you will regret it." Julia could no longer contain the fear in her hands. Every part of her body screamed for safety. She felt like a cornered animal, about to be torn apart. She knew she had no choice, that there, in that hospital where she should be safe, there was no more room for her. She grabbed her things with the haste that fear imposed and left through the corridors without looking back. Her face swollen and bruised, her eyes blurred by tears. She went down the hospital stairs like a shadow, avoiding any contact, hiding from the light of a world of pain. She needed to escape. She needed to protect that little life that was now all she had left. A child. Her child. David's child. At the hospital door, the night wind blew hard, as if to carry her away, push her to a new destiny. Julia crossed her arms, hugging her belly, and whispered with a choked voice, "I will take care of you, my love. You don't even need to disappear from the world. I will protect you." And then, with a broken heart, but more determined than ever, Julia disappeared into the darkness of the night. What is the most shocking aspect of Eleanor Stone's confrontation with Julia? How does the slap and Eleanor's cruel demands reflect her desperation to control David's life? Share your insights in the comments. A son's vow of vengeance. 3 days had passed since the tragedy, and the sun, as if to bring comfort, invaded the room with its golden rays, dancing on the silent walls of that hospital. But David was still empty, unconscious, motionless, as if his soul had been trapped in the moment everything happened. The soft breeze coming through the curtains seemed to whisper the name that was trapped on his lips. Julia. That name that now pulsed silently in his chest, somewhere between love and pain. It was then, in an almost imperceptible moment, that the nurse saw David's fingers move. First a slight tremor. Then, like a miracle, his eyes slowly opened. The light made him squint for an instant. His body ached. His mind spun like a whirlwind, but his heart knew what it needed to ask. "Julia," he murmured, his voice weak, cut short by the effort. "Sir, please try not to get agitated. I'm going to call the doctor," the nurse said, rushing out of the room. Minutes later, the doctor entered hurriedly, radiating an aura of relief. "David, you're out of danger. You're finally back," he said with a slight smile. But David heard nothing else. His heart beat in a desperate rhythm, searching for answers no one was giving him. "Where's Julia? Is she okay? Where is she? Why is no one telling me anything?" The door opened again, revealing Eleanor's imposing figure. Her eyes filled with tears when she saw her son awake. But there was something in her gaze, something that hid more than it revealed. "Thank God, my son, you've woken up," she said, walking towards him with open arms. David grasped his mother's hand, but his eyes were imploring, distressed. "Mother, Please, where is she? Julia, how is she? Is she okay? Why is no one telling me anything?" Eleanor took a deep breath, as if she had been rehearsing for days the cold words that were about to come out. "David, listen, forget about that woman. She wasn't who you thought. She was an opportunist, a gold digger. As soon as she had the chance, she fled. She was afraid you'd never wake up, and she disappeared. No goodbyes, no explanations. I'm so sorry, son. But she never loved you. She was only interested in your money. By now, she must be out there trying to ensnare another millionaire." "Fool." David felt a blow to his chest. It was as if someone had torn his soul apart with their hands. He tried to shake his head, even foolishly, even weakly. "That's not true. Julia loves me. I know she loves me." "She loves you, son. Then why did she leave? Why didn't she wait for you? Why did no one see her leaving the hospital? She fled, David. She fled and left you here, as if you were nothing." David screamed Julia's name in desperation. He tried to get up, but he was held back by nurses and doctors who kept him still before his condition worsened. In the following days, the hospital became a silent Calvary. David plunged into a dark abyss of silence and pain. He didn't eat. He didn't talk. He just stared into space, as if trying to find some answer there. His soul bled from an absence he didn't understand. A strong, firm man, in love. Now he seemed like a child, abandoned to his own fate. Eleanor watched him from afar, deep down, pleased. Every tear from her son was a confirmation that her mission was accomplished. That miserable florist would never again set foot in the Stone family home. But that morning, something changed. David, pale and dejected, got up. He drank his morning coffee in silence. His eyes were cold, icy, but there was a living fury burning behind them. He faced his mother, his voice serene, but laden with a somber hatred. "I'm going to get revenge, Mother." Eleanor stopped, surprised. "She saved your life. I faced death to protect her. And what do I get? Abandonment. Betrayal." "Oh no," he said, rising without fear. His expression was now that of a man who had lost everything, except the desire for justice. "I'm going to find Julia, and when I find her, she's going to pay for everything." Every tear, every sleepless night, every single second of silence. "She tricked me. She ran away. She's going to pay." Eleanor suppressed a smile. Victory was now in front of her. That poor woman, nameless, without inheritance, without pedigree, would never be part of the Stone family. How does Eleanor's deception about Julia's disappearance impact David's emotional recovery? What is the significance of David's vow of revenge, and how does it misdirect his anger from his mother to Julia? Share your insights in the comments. A mother's struggle, a father's redemption, while David sank into his pain in a distant city. Far beyond the luxurious walls of the Stone family, Julia faced her own darkness. A cold, sharp, merciless darkness. Alone, without friends, without anyone to hold her hand or ask if she was okay. The chill of dawn was crueler than that of the orphanage where she grew up. And hunger was no longer just discomfort. It was a constant, heavy, agonizing presence that made her fear even when the sun shone in the sky. And now, a new life was growing inside her. A small, innocent being beating next to her heart, unaware of the war its mother fought every day to survive. She had tried everything. She had scoured flower shops throughout the city, hoping someone would give her a chance. But the no's came before she could explain her situation. Doors closed one by one, and with them, Julia's hopes also closed. The world seemed to have decided to turn its back. And then she began to wonder, what about when my belly starts to show? What about when I can't walk fast anymore? What about when I can't pretend everything's okay? With her thoughts consuming her peace, Julia sat on a park bench. Around her, families rushed by. Couples hugged, children laughed, and she sat there, alone, with empty eyes, her stomach screaming for something the stale bread in her bag couldn't silence. With trembling hands, she took it out of the bag, kneaded it, and began to eat. It was all that was left. And yet, each bite seemed a cruel reminder that her meager savings were running out. She knew, either she found a place to sleep, or she would spend the night on the streets again. She looked up at the sky, and her voice, choked with pain, whispered, "My God, what am I going to do? My baby can't come into the world like this. He doesn't deserve this." She bowed her head, defeated. Tears came silently, streaming without permission, washing a face marked by abandonment, by rejection, by injustice. Then, she brought her hand to the necklace clutched to her chest, her only valuable possession, her only thread to something greater than her pain. The orphanage mother told her that this necklace was left with her when she was a baby, perhaps by her mother. It was a simple piece, but laden with a mysterious, almost sacred energy. It was all she had, all that remained of her identity, her history, her origins. The necklace was the invisible thread that connected her to an unknown past, without her knowing it, to a future that was about to change her life forever. "Maybe if I sell this necklace I can get some money to eat for a few days," she said with a choked voice, her heart in pieces, and her fingers clenching the piece as if expecting an answer. But at that moment, something stirred within her, something stronger than desperation. The tiny baby in her womb, even without knowing it, was telling its mother, firmly and clearly, "It's not over yet." Julia closed her eyes, crying in silence. No one saw her, no one cared. But the universe saw her, and destiny was preparing. Her answer. Julia's tears, so pure, so honest, did not fall in vain. Each one was a prayer cast to the sky. Each one was a step towards the light. On that park bench, a wounded young woman clutched the necklace to her chest, and although she didn't know it, that piece held secrets that would change her life, secrets that connected her directly to a past, the past that had been stolen from her, to a truth that Eleanor would one day sorely fear. Julia's suffering was real. It was profound. But it was also the forge that molded her strength. She didn't know it yet, but she wasn't being destroyed. She was being prepared. Because no lie, no matter how well told, can withstand the force of truth, and no evil, no matter how cruel, can extinguish the light of someone born to shine. What is the significance of the necklace Julia carries, and how does it symbolize her connection to a hidden past? How does Julia's determination to protect her unborn child reveal her inherent strength despite her desperate circumstances? Share your insights in the comments. Julia slowly got up from the bench, as if every cell in her body begged to remain motionless, far from more disappointment. But there was something inside her that wouldn't let her give up. Perhaps maternal instinct. Perhaps the invisible thread connecting her soul to something greater than her pain. When her eyes found the sign glowing in the sunlight, jewelry, light and gold, her heart sped up. It was the only option. The necklace she always wore around her neck, the only reminder of the past she never knew, would now become a means to ensure her baby's survival. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision, and crossed the street. Entering the jewelry store, she was greeted by a woman with a serene expression but alert eyes. "Mrs. Thompson, the manager of that branch for over 2 decades. She noticed Julia's dejected appearance, her pale face, her shoulders stooped by the weight of the world. Yet she was kind. "May I help you?" she asked, coming from behind the counter. "Yes, ma'am. I want to sell this necklace," Julia replied with a choked voice, pulling the piece from inside her blouse with hesitant hands. When Mrs. Thompson held the necklace, something in her expression changed. Her eyes widened, her lips parted. She brought her glasses closer, held the jewel up to the light, and for an instant, seemed frozen in time. The silence made Julia's heart beat faster. "Ma'am," she asked worriedly, "do you think it's worth anything?" "Yes, this necklace is very valuable, but not just for the gold," Mrs. Thompson replied, now looking directly at Julia. "Where did you get it?" "It's mine. It was left with me. When I was abandoned at the orphanage, the mother said it was left with me when I was a baby." "What's your name, dear?" "Julia." "Julia Smith. I'm only selling it because I need to eat. I need to survive. I have a baby on the way." Mrs. Thompson almost dropped the necklace. The jewel in her hands was unique, custom-made, with a symbol engraved in gold, white gold, and a ruby in the center. An exclusive piece she had only seen once in her life, almost 20 years ago, in a dossier about a missing baby. Mrs. Thompson, formerly the jewelry store manager, was also a volunteer for the Missing Children NGO, founded by a man devastated by the loss of his daughter. Now, that piece and that name struck her like an unspoken confirmation. "Please wait here," Mrs. Thompson asked, going into the back room and picking up the phone with trembling hands. "Ma'am, do you think I stole that necklace?" "No, dear, I believe you. And if everything you told me is true, then today we're going to solve the mystery of a baby who went missing many years ago." Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, at the top of an imposing skyscraper, Mr. William Davis watched the city through the wide windows of his office. At 48, he was the top figure of the Davis Corporation, a legend in the hotel sector, a man feared by some, admired by others, but respected by all. His graying hair was always neatly styled, his clothes impeccable, but his eyes, those stormy gray eyes, carried a deep sadness, an emptiness that neither fortune, nor luxuries, nor a warmth could fill. 20 years ago, his life had been split in two. His great love, Anna, had secretly become pregnant with his child after his family, wealthy and conservative, forbade him from any contact with her. They had sworn to escape together, but she disappeared, and only years later did he learn of the tragedy. Anna died during childbirth. The baby, his daughter, had vanished. The police investigated, the press reported, but nothing was found. No body, no clue. A hole in time, and a roaring silence within William every day since. He didn't give up. He founded the Missing Children NGO. He financed private investigations, scoured orphanages, hospitals, forgotten archives, until one day a report fell into his hands. A volunteer reported a child named Julia left at the doorstep of an orphanage with the same birth date as his daughter. And there was the necklace. The description was identical to the jewel he himself had made for Anna, with the initials hidden among the details. It was a real lead. But when investigators arrived at the orphanage, she had already left. Since then, William lived between meetings and searches, between business and sorrow. On days like that, where the wind blew hard against the skyscraper windows, he felt even lonelier. The phone rang. William, accustomed to the routine of appointments, picked up the device with a certain disinterest. "Davis?" His voice was firm, leaving no room for beating around the bush. On the other end of the line, a soft voice responded. "Mr. Davis, my name is Olivia. I'm from the Missing Children NGO. We need to talk." William's heart beat faster. He leaned back in his chair. "I'm listening." "We just received a call from a jewelry store in a nearby city. A young woman named Julia tried to sell a necklace with the exact description of the piece you gave us years ago. The necklace is with her. She claims to have been left with it when she was abandoned at the orphanage." For an instant, everything went silent. The city noises faded. William's breath hitched in his chest. His hands trembled. After 20 years, the possibility of the truth, of his daughter being alive. "Are you sure?" he whispered, his voice already choked. "Not yet. But if she's telling the truth, she could be Isabella, your daughter." William closed his eyes. A single tear fell. For the first time in a long time, a spark of hope ignited his heart. "Where is she?" "Safe with me. She doesn't know anything yet. She only knows she's selling the necklace to try to survive. And you're pregnant." The impact of the news pierced him like lightning. His daughter, his grandchild, his blood. Alive. Lost. But within his reach. "Olivia, prepare everything. I want to see her today. And if it's her, I will bring my daughter back. And nothing, no one, will separate her from me again." What is the profound significance of the necklace in connecting Julia to her biological family? How does William's 20-year search and the Missing Children NGO reveal his unwavering love for his lost daughter? Share your insights in the comments. A father's embrace, a daughter's unfolding story. The necklace still trembled in Julia's hands as she looked around, as if she wanted to escape, to disappear. Again, like so many other times in her life when she had been rejected, discarded, invisible. But there, in front of that woman, who seemed to carry the weight of a secret in her eyes, she couldn't move a muscle. The words sounded like a distant echo. "You could be Isabella Davis." It was impossible. It was absurd. And yet it made sense. The necklace, the abandonment, the inexplicable loneliness that always seemed to have a greater meaning. It was as if for the first time the universe whispered an answer to the questions she never dared to ask. Julia, or Isabella, felt a tear escape. Hot and rebellious, as Olivia spoke on the phone. Organizing everything with precise, almost military efficiency. The name William Davis fell like a storm in her mind. The magnate, the businessman, the man who had been searching for his missing daughter for 2 decades. And now, he was coming. For her. Hours later, the sky seemed to shine more intensely as William's private jet cut through the clouds. On board, he didn't utter a word. Around his neck, an envelope with old photos of Anna, the woman who had been the great love of his life and the mother of the daughter he never knew. As the plane landed, he felt the weight of 20 years compressing his chest. The absence, the guilt, the lost time. But also hope, tenuous, fragile, but alive. When William entered the headquarters of the Missing Children NGO, time seemed to stop. His eyes, accustomed to meeting rooms and multi-million-dollar contracts, fixed on the slender figure of a young woman, standing next to the receptionist. The world slowly spun. Her features were a mirror of Anna's, the same deep gaze, the delicately shaped lips, the fair skin like porcelain. His heart faltered. "Isabella," he whispered, as if invoking a ghost. She turned her head, startled, and for a second, both stared at each other, as if they could decipher each other's souls with a single look. Julia was used to looks of disdain, pity, judgment. But what she saw in that man's eyes was different. It was love. Pure love, without questions, without demands. and when he stepped forward and enveloped her in a tight embrace, she wanted to resist. She wanted to pull away. But she couldn't. Her body, tired of fighting the world, simply yielded. "I found you," he said, his voice broken as if each syllable were a confession. "Julia? No. Isabella." She closed her eyes, and for the first time she felt the warmth of a father. William revealed the whole story: the romance with Anna, the rejection by his wealthy family, the tragic event, the tireless search for his missing daughter. He told her about the necklace, that necklace he had once given to Anna as a promise of eternal love. And now, decades later, that same necklace was the key that connected all the dots. Julia listened in silence, each piece fitting together like a mystical puzzle designed by invisible hands. That life she thought was just a result of abandonment, of pain, of rejection, actually had deep roots, untold stories, and a love that defied time. William didn't hesitate. In a few hours, she was taken by his private jet to what would now be her new home. The Davis estate, with its white columns, perfectly sculpted gardens, and corridors that exuded history, was the complete opposite of everything Julia knew. There were no shouts, no insults, no punishments. There was silence, peace, a silence that didn't scream loneliness, but welcome. At the mansion door, William took his daughter's hand and said in a firm voice, "You're home." Julia felt the words catch in her throat. Tears danced in her eyes, not from sadness, but from disbelief. That name, Isabella Davis, sounded strange, like a new dress that still needed to fit her body, but it carried promises, a new beginning. And for the first time in a long time, Julia believed that perhaps the future could be more than just surviving. Maybe now she could truly live. What is the significance of the Missing Children NGO and Minders Thompson's role in connecting Julia to her biological father? How does William's immediate embrace and his sharing of Anna's story begin to heal Julia's deep-seated emotional wounds? Share your insights in the comments. A new chapter begins. William, from the day he reunited with Isabella, made an unwavering decision. The priority now was his daughter. No meeting, no corporate merger, no billion-dollar contract would outweigh the value of every second by her side. He called a meeting with his trusted advisor, transferred temporary command of the Davis Corporation, and informed all directors. He was on indefinite leave. The headquarters corridors missed the silence of his absence, but no one dared to question it. Those who knew William's pain understood. There was a wound that had bled for 20 years, and now, finally, he had the opportunity to heal it. William immersed himself in the role of father with a devotion that even surprised himself. Every morning began with breakfast prepared by the house chefs, but it was he who pulled out Isabella's chair, smiled, and asked how she slept. Then, they would leave. No security detail surrounded them excessively. No drivers kept them away from the real world. He wanted to walk with her, to feel his daughter's presence in the simplest details, crossing a street, entering a store, or hearing her laugh among the crowded clothing racks. It was a reunion of souls, a desperate attempt to fill the gaps of 2 decades with love and attention. Isabella, formerly known as Julia, blossomed with each new day. With elegant clothes, soft makeup, a more expressive face, and free hair that danced in the wind, she no longer resembled the abandoned girl from the orphanage. Now, her eyes shone. Her posture was confident. And yet, there were moments when sadness would overtake her, like on that specific day, as they walked among sophisticated shop windows, when she decided to tell the truth about her recent past. They stopped in front of a fountain, where the sound of the water eased the pain growing within her. "Dad," Isabella began, "I need to tell you everything about the Stone family, about David." And the words came like a flood, held back for too long. She told him about the daily insults, about the stares that pierced her as if she were invisible, about Eleanor's cold disdain. But nothing hurt more than remembering the infamous proposal: have an abortion or disappear from David's life. Those words still echoed like blades cutting her soul. And then she spoke about the hospital, the desperate escape, the days on the streets, her empty stomach, her body trembling with cold on nights that seemed endless. William's eyes turned stormy, his jaw clenched, his hands clenched into fists. "Damn them," he growled, his voice choked. "The story repeated itself. My gaze got lost somewhere distant. That's exactly how I lost your mother. She was also pressured, also threatened. She fled, pregnant with you, out of fear, cornered by my own family. I was a coward, Isabella. Too young, too blind. And when I finally discovered that she had died in childbirth, you had already vanished. I searched for years, but now I see clearly. It was my own family that took you from me. They hid you to punish me, to prevent your blood from flowing in the corridors of our mansion." "Julia, Isabella." She brought a hand to her mouth, her eyes wide, her heart pounding in her chest. "My God, how my mother must have suffered." The image of Anna, young, scared, running with a child clutched to her chest, invaded her mind like a nightmare that finally made sense. Tears welled up, timidly at first, then flowing freely, hot, salty, carrying years of unanswered questions, of unnamed pains. William pulled her close, enveloped her in the embrace he had longed to give her for 2 decades. There, in the middle of the city, amidst cars and rushing people, father and daughter cried together. 2 survivors of the same cruel past. "They won't touch you again," William promised, his voice trembling but determined. "I promise you, Isabella, you're safe now. And no one, absolutely no one, will take you from me again." She just clung to her father, feeling for the first time that she didn't need to be strong. She didn't need to escape. For the first time, she could just be loved. How does Isabella's painful recounting of her past to William deepen their bond and reveal the extent of the Stone family's cruelty? What is the significance of William's vow to protect Isabella and his admission of his own past cowardice? Share your insights in the comments. Justice comes knocking. At that exact moment, David Stone was experiencing the peak of an internal collapse. The tailored suit he wore, the luxury watch on his wrist, the imported car that drove him, all of it meant nothing in the face of the void opening within him. The man who once dominated meeting rooms with a single phrase now trembled inside. Stone Corporation faced one of its worst crises. Numbers plummeted, shareholders pressured, and a decisive meeting was scheduled for that morning. Sitting in the back seat of the Rolls-Royce, David tried to organize his arguments, adjust the mental spreadsheets, rehearse the ideal tone of voice to appear confident. But, as if by a cruel twist of fate, what was about to change his life wasn't in the boardroom. It was on the streets. It was a second, a memory, an impact. David looked out the window distracted, when his eyes fixed on a silhouette crossing the sidewalk. He froze. His heart stopped for an instant, then pounded in an insane race. "Stop the car!" he shouted, almost tearing his throat. The driver braked abruptly, startled, as David leaned towards the window, his eyes wide as if he had seen a ghost. But it wasn't a delusion. It wasn't a figment of his imagination. It was her. It was Julia. She walked gracefully down the busy street, but she wasn't alone. arm in arm with a tall, elegant man with graying hair and an aristocratic bearing, Julia looked like a different woman. She wore a designer dress, her hair perfectly styled, and a smile that David hadn't seen since the early days of their romance. No, it wasn't possible. That wasn't the Julia who abandoned him in a hospital. That was someone else, a confident, supported, radiant woman. The shock was so great that David didn't realize he was holding his breath. "It can't be," he whispered to himself, feeling a slight dizziness. "It's her. It's Julia. But what the hell is she doing arm in arm with that man? A businessman? A new lover? A protector?" His blood boiled in his veins. The pain, which until then had been sadness, turned into rage, a corrosive fire consuming him from within. His mind, already shaken by business failures and poorly digested guilt, now churned with jealousy, indignation, and despair. The old narrative that his mother Eleanor had planted in his subconscious came back with force. "She only wanted our money. She's an opportunist, David." And at that moment, seeing her next to another man, without even knowing who he was, David was certain. His mother was right. Julia was just repeating the same trick, with another millionaire, another fool just like him. "While I suffer, while I destroy myself inside, she parades happily with another," he murmured through clenched teeth, punching the car's upholstery so hard that the driver felt the vibration reach the steering wheel. "She's going to pay for this," David said, his voice laden with hurt and resentment. "She's going to pay for every sleepless night, for every time I blamed myself, for every memory that made me cry." But even in his fury, he was a broken man, a man who had lost not only the woman he loved, but also the opportunity to be a father. Guilt still haunted his mind, but he chose to silence it with hatred. Desperate for answers, he leaned towards the driver. "Did you see him? Did you see who she was with? I need to know who that man is." But the confused driver tried to understand the sudden blow. And before he could react, before they could maneuver to follow the couple, David saw the impossible happen before his eyes. The pair entered a metallic black Lamborghini that gleamed in the sun like a jewel on wheels. The roar of the engine echoed down the street, and in a second, the car disappeared among the other vehicles, leaving behind only a haze of frustration. David got out of the car, looked around, tried to follow with his eyes. But it was too late. They had disappeared like a dream that dissolves upon waking. There, standing on the sidewalk, amidst the rushing crowd, David Stone was just a broken man, abandoned by his own ignorance and by the mistakes of the past. For the first time, he felt that perhaps he had lost Julia forever. But a new obsession was born at that moment. He needed to know where she was. He needed to find out who the man beside her was. And above all, he needed revenge, even if it meant destroying everything and everyone around him. How does David's chance encounter with Julia and William ignite a new, destructive obsession within him? What is the significance of David's distorted perception of Julia, fueled by Eleanor's past manipulation? Share your insights in the comments. A daughter's legacy, a father's reckoning. The days that followed Julia's radical transformation were intense and life-changing. Every morning, she woke up in a world she had only dared to dream of. No longer the gloomy orphanage, nor the cold corridors of the stone mansion, but a real home with warmth, love, and, most importantly, belonging. She was no longer just Julia, the orphan, the florist, the despised girl. Now she was Isabella Davis, daughter of one of the most powerful men in the country, heiress to an empire that seemed to have been created for her. It was in this new universe that something within her awakened. Fascinated by meetings, by strategic decisions, by complex negotiations that moved millions, Julia began to frequent her father's office daily, observing every detail, taking notes, asking sharp questions, and demonstrating a quick reasoning that surprised even the most experienced executives. She sat beside William during board meetings, absorbing every piece of information with a thirst for knowledge. For the first time, she felt she had a purpose, and now she perfectly understood why David was so passionate about that world, why he poured so much of himself into the company. There was an intellectual game there, a dance of power, a silent adrenaline rush that was addictive. One afternoon, after an intense meeting with foreign investors, Julia took a deep breath, turned to her father, and with shining eyes spoke firmly. "Dad, I want to work in the company with you. I want to learn everything." William, who was reviewing some papers, stopped. He slowly looked up at her, and seeing the determination etched on her face, a long, proud smile appeared. "My daughter, nothing would make me happier. All of this is rightfully yours, and someday you'll have to lead the business. It's better to start now." From that moment on, Isabella was no longer just an heiress. She was also an apprentice, a future leader, and soon a benchmark. In the months that followed, she dedicated herself diligently, studying until dawn, participating in meetings, formulating strategies, and surprising the veterans of the Davis Corporation with her insight and modern vision. William saw in her the image of the daughter life had taken from him. But he also saw in her the executive who would guarantee the future of the Davis legacy. And it was in that whirlwind of changes that something even greater happened. Julia gave birth. The delivery was calm, surrounded by affection and care. She held a small, pink baby in her arms, with intense eyes and a serene expression. "William Jr.," she said with tenderness, naming her son in honor of the grandfather who had given her back her identity, her dignity, and her love. William Davis, holding his grandson in his arms for the first time, was overcome with emotion. Tears streamed freely down his face, marked by time and by the pain of so many years of absence. "You are my present, my legacy, my second chance." But as the months passed, Julia, now more mature, stronger, but still emotionally scarred, noticed something that squeezed her chest more and more constantly. The child was beginning to reveal traits she knew well. His eyes, the way he tilted his head, his charming smile, his dreamy gaze. He was the exact copy of David. Holding little William Jr. in her arms, she felt her heart clench. Memories of the past came like waves. The moments of affection with David, the plans they made together, the promise of eternal love. And then the cruel breakup, the coldness, the abandonment in the hospital, Eleanor's harsh words. "Have an abortion or disappear from David's life." That woman's voice still echoed in her mind like a curse. However much she had rebuilt her life, however much she now lived surrounded by love, luxury, and recognition, there was a part of her heart that remained chained to the past. She still loved him. She still wanted to run to him and shout, "You have a son, our son." But fear silenced her. The fear of being rejected again. The fear of losing everything. The fear that Eleanor would destroy her peace, as she had done with her mother. To survive this feeling, Julia buried herself in work. She threw herself headfirst into business alongside her father. Her name began to appear on the covers of financial magazines. She was praised for her competence, her strategic sensibility, her audacity. In a few months, she closed contracts William never imagined possible, incorporated subsidiaries, restructured entire sectors, brought innovation and record profits. "She's Isabella," William said one afternoon, watching his daughter coordinate a video conference with European businessmen. "She has my blood in her veins." She smiled slightly, grateful. But deep down, she knew. She also carried another's blood, David's blood. In her son, little William Jr., was the living, pulsating proof of that love which, however buried, never ceased to exist. How does William's devotion to Isabella and his support of her career reflect a desire to atone for his past failures with Anna? What are the key internal conflicts Julia faces regarding her past with David, especially now that she has their son, William Jr.? Share your insights in the comments. The crumbling empire, a son's blindness. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, at the top of the glass penthouse crowning the stone building, David's world was silently collapsing. The Persian rugs, the modern art paintings, the luxurious furniture, everything now seemed colorless. That environment that had always exuded power and security had transformed into an invisible battlefield. The stone empire, built with arrogance and pride, began to crumble from within, like a house of cards on the verge of collapse. The financial crisis sweeping through the company was more than just a bad phase. It was the direct reflection of worn-out leadership and wrong decisions made with a broken heart and a conflicted mind. The real estate market, once almost exclusively dominated by the Stone family, was now the stage for a new and silent enemy. Mr. Alexander Thorne, cold, strategic, and with a fortune capable of buying half the city, Alexander began a meticulous attack, gradually and discreetly buying Stone shares. Each week, a new slice of the company fell into his hands, and with it, control. At the same time, he spread rumors among investors, creating insecurity, driving away partners, and causing the stock value to plummet. David knew what was happening, but he seemed trapped between acting and sinking. His thoughts were constantly elsewhere, or rather, on someone else. Julia. Her image, walking next to that man, a millionaire, elegant, confident, wouldn't leave his mind. Who was he? Another gullible fool enchanted by Julia's charm? Another victim of her innocent girl act? Every second without answers was torture. He hired the best private detectives in the country. They scoured airports, hotels, clinics, social media, hospitals. But nothing. It was as if Julia had disappeared from the face of the earth, or worse, as if she had intentionally hidden, as if she knew exactly what she was doing. And that destroyed him. David lived a private war between the pain of betrayal and suffocating longing. He found himself remembering her perfume, the way she smiled, the warmth of her skin in the mornings they shared. But the next instant, his mind screamed with fury. She tricked me. She ran away. And in that emotional turmoil, his decisions concerning the company became unstable. It was in this chaotic scenario that the office door opened abruptly. Eleanor, with an air of tragedy, entered like a hurricane. "Son, we need to talk urgently," she said, without even noticing the crumpled papers on the floor or the empty whiskey glass on the desk. "My nails are a horror. I need a manicure. And look at this hair. I need my hairdresser. And I don't have any decent dresses left. You forgot to give me this month's allowance." David closed his eyes for an instant. He took a deep breath, trying to control the urge to scream. When he spoke, his voice was firm and sharp. "Enough, Mother. You don't understand what's happening here. We're on the verge of collapse. The company is bleeding. Alexander Thorne is buying everything on the sly. I'm trying to keep what's left standing, fighting every day so we don't lose everything. And you show up here worried about manicures and new clothes?" Eleanor paled. For the first time in a long time, she realized he might not just be exaggerating. Maybe, indeed, everything was about to crumble. "But is it that serious?" she asked, in an almost childlike whisper. David slowly stood up, facing his mother with heavy eyes. "Mother, if it weren't for me, by now you would have lost the penthouse, the cars, the staff. You would have to wash your own clothes and cook your own food. And yes, it's serious. I'm negotiating the sale of more than half of Stone's shares with a hotel multinational. If we don't close this deal, we're going to hand everything over to Alexander. He's already bought part of the shares, and now he has a voice on the board. If he gets majority control, he'll destroy our name, our legacy." Eleanor sat down, stunned. For the first time, speechless. That woman who always hid behind expensive dresses and social scandals now felt the weight of a reality she never imagined facing. I didn't know. I thought it was just another bad phase." David approached the window. He looked out at the city below, the vibrant lights of a world that seemed to go on, oblivious to the chaos within him. "I need to find a new investor. Someone strong who believes in our vision and can save us. Someone with capital, but also with vision and speed, before it's too late." Silence hung in the air, and though he didn't say it aloud, a part of him screamed inside. "Where are you, Julia? Why did you leave me when I needed you most?" He still didn't know, but the woman he believed to be his greatest disappointment was, in reality, his only salvation. How does David's desperate search for Julia, fueled by his mother's lies, blind him to the true crisis at hand? What is the significance of Alexander Thorne's silent acquisition of Stone Corporation shares? Share your insights in the comments. The unveiling. A night of reckoning. Amidst the avalanche of thoughts, as the late afternoon light began to filter through the office windows, as if to calm David's inner chaos, the phone rang with a firm, sharp tone, pulling him from his daze. He slowly reached out, as if fearing more bad news. After all, in recent months, every call seemed to bring more weight to his already exhausted shoulders. "Hello?" he answered in a low, grave voice, his mind still immersed in memories and worries. "Mr. David Stone?" The voice on the other end was formal, with a soft accent laden with power and confidence. "Yes, this is he," he replied, straightening up in his chair, as if presenting the importance of the conversation. "This is Davis Corporation. We are pleased to inform you that we have decided to accept your proposal. The transfer of the negotiated value will be made to Stone Corporation's account today. We are pleased to do business with you, Mr. Stone." For an instant, the world seemed to stop. David gripped the phone tighter, as if he needed to lean on it. His lips parted, and a sigh of relief escaped his chest. This was not just a financial victory. It was the temporary salvation of everything he had built, of his family's reputation, of the Stone legacy he had sworn never to let fall. "I'm happy to do business with Davis Corporation," he replied, with a formality tinged with gratitude. "You can be sure you won't regret it. Stone has decades of prestige and commitment. And to finalize our agreement, I would like to invite the president of Davis Corporation and his family to dinner tonight at my house. The Stone Mansion will be at your disposal to receive them with all honors. I insist on the presence of the esteemed Mr. Davis and his family, of course." There was a brief silence on the other end of the line, followed by a thoughtful response. "I need to confirm with Mr. Davis and his daughter. His schedule is always very full. But if you wish, I will call you back later to confirm. I'll be waiting." "Thank you." When the connection ended, David leaned back in his chair, his heart still racing. The battle was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, he felt he had found an ally, a significant investor, a powerful partner. Davis, a name that now became part of his destiny. Hours later, the phone rang again. The confirmation came like a breath of fresh air amidst a storm. President William Davis and his daughter, Isabella Davis, would be at the Stone Mansion tonight for dinner. David wasted no time. He picked up the phone and told Eleanor, who answered with her usual elegant impatience. "Mother," he told her, trying to hide the emotion in his voice. "Thank God, I managed to close the deal with Davis Corporation. Prepare dinner for tonight. Everything has to be perfect, impeccable. We are receiving a new investor." On the other end of the line, Eleanor gasped as if she had just climbed 15 flights of stairs in a single bound. "Thank God, my son," she exclaimed, almost euphoric. "I've heard a lot about this esteemed Mr. Davis. They say he's one of the most respected men in the country, and he has a daughter. The only heiress to the name is Isabella, isn't she? His right hand in business. It would be perfect if she took an interest in you. Imagine, David, uniting the Stone and Davis families. A perfect alliance. A woman worthy of our name. Worthy of you, my son." David closed his eyes and impatiently shook his head. "Mother, for the love of God, how many times have I told you I'm not going to get involved in an arranged marriage? That's a thing of the past. Mr. Davis and his daughter's visit here today is strictly professional. That's it. Please, respect that." All right, Eleanor said, but her voice betrayed that she was far from giving up. "You're stubborn, but romance at this point in life doesn't fill bank accounts, David. You need to think about the future, about the Stone family legacy. A marriage to the Davis heiress would guarantee not only the company's stability, but would place you at a level of influence your father never achieved. Think about it." "Come on, Mother," he interrupted her firmly. "Just organize dinner and make sure everything is perfect. You can do it, my son. Tonight will be memorable." He hung up the phone and looked at the device for a few seconds, as if still hearing Eleanor's voice echoing inside. He stood up, walked to the library window, and watched the sky slowly turn orange. Night was about to fall, and with it, a new chapter of his life was about to begin. Little did David know that the woman he was trying to forget was the very same one who would walk through the Stone Mansion doors that night. The heiress of Davis Corporation, the mother of his child, the woman his heart could never erase. Julia. How does the unexpected deal with Davis Corporation offer David a temporary reprieve while setting the stage for a shocking confrontation? What is Eleanor's true motivation for pushing David towards a marriage with Isabella Davis? Share your insights in the comments. A night of reckoning. "Dad, I don't know if we did the right thing accepting the dinner invitation at the Stone Mansion." Julia's voice trembled as she adjusted her pearl earrings in front of the mirror, but her eyes reflected a whirlwind of emotions no adornment could hide. She looked beautiful, dressed in an elegant, discreet, sophisticated burgundy gown, but it was her gaze. Ah, her gaze. Her gaze carried a weight of memories, hurts, and insecurity that reappeared with force on this particular night. Behind her, William Davis appeared imposing, his graying hair perfectly styled, his tailored suit impeccably aligned in every seam. He paused for an instant and faced his daughter's reflection with firmness and pride. "Daughter, don't worry. Tonight," he said in a low, firm voice, as if each word were a sentence, "Robert Stone, and especially Eleanor Stone, will pay dearly for all the humiliation they put you through. I promise you. And that mama's boy, David Stone, will finally learn to be a man. He will learn what it is to face a father who doesn't bow his head and a daughter who was born from the ashes. This will be a historic night, Julia." She slowly turned, her gaze fixed on her father, a contained glimmer of pain and doubt still present. "But Father, I think David never knew about the threats Eleanor made. He never knew I was pregnant. He never knew he had a son. Maybe he suffered as much as I did." William clenched his fists for an instant and took a deep breath. The contained rage in his veins seemed about to explode, but his voice, when he spoke again, was cold and controlled. It doesn't matter. What matters is that he was weak, a coward. And forgive me, but as cowardly as I was in the past when I allowed other people to destroy my life, my choices, my family. But now, my daughter, everything is different. Now you have a powerful name. Now you are a prepared, respected woman, mother of an heir, my successor, and the new owner of half the shares of Stone Corporation. Let David kneel, if he wants to get close to you again. Julia swallowed hard. The dress seemed tighter, as if the fabric pressed against her chest, where a heart beat too fast. She wanted to believe that this was a simple business negotiation, that nothing else would shake her. But everything in her said otherwise. "Dad, what if we're going too far?" she asked in an almost childlike whisper, almost the same girl who once cried in his arms, saying she loved David. But William didn't back down. On the contrary, a bitter smile appeared on his lips, and he let out a contained, almost cruel laugh. Could Eleanor Stone have imagined this when she humiliated you? Could she have foreseen that the girl she cruelly kicked out of the mansion would return as the heiress to half of her empire? I want to see her face, Julia. I want to see the astonishment, the despair, the tears, the regret. I want to see Eleanor choke on her own venom. And David will understand that he lost the right to choose when he allowed others to decide for him. This isn't revenge, daughter. He walked to her and firmly took her hands. It's justice. It's honor. "Dad," Julia murmured, her eyes welling up. "I just wanted to be happy. I just wanted to have my son by my father's side. I wanted to be loved without having to prove my worth. I wanted David to have fought for me. But he stayed silent. He disappeared. He allowed his mother to destroy me. And that's why, daughter," William said, wiping a solitary tear from her face. "No one, absolutely no one, humiliates a Davis and gets away with it. The time has come for reckoning. Tonight, you don't enter that mansion as a wounded woman. You enter as a powerful woman, and I will be by your side." As night fell over the city, the black car, a Rolls-Royce Le Rose Noir drop-tail from the Davis family, was already waiting at the door, gleaming like an elegant shadow about to invade the heart of the Stone Empire. Julia took a deep breath, put on her emerald ring, adjusted her hair, and before leaving, looked one last time at the photograph of her with David, forgotten between the pages of a book on the nightstand. There was love there, still was, but there was also pain, and now there was power. The silent battle of glances and words would begin in a few hours, and no one in the Stone mansion was prepared for what was about to happen. What is William's true motivation for orchestrating this confrontation, beyond just financial gain? How does Julia's internal conflict, between her past love for David and her newfound power, add complexity to her role in this plan? Share your insights in the comments. The grand revelation in the Stone mansion. Everything sparkled, as if the family's turbulent past had been left behind. Lights gleamed on the crystal chandeliers hanging from the high ceiling. The dining table was a true banquet of refinement, and employees rushed about, adjusting the final details with the precision of a gala ball. Musicians discreetly tuned their instruments in the background, and the aroma of fresh flowers mixed with the fine spices from the kitchen filled the air. Everything was impeccable, almost real, as if luxury could conceal the deep cracks of a family about to face its greatest upheaval. Eleanor Stone, wearing a golden gown that outshone even the crystals around her, wouldn't stop talking. She was like an uncontrolled rattle, repeating her convictions with the same intensity as someone shouting to stifle their own insecurity. "See, Robert," she said, casting an accusing glance at her husband. Your son's stubbornness is wasting the opportunity of a lifetime. The daughter of the most powerful man of the moment is about to enter this house, and David insists on this nonsense of marrying for love. For love. She laughed scornfully. Tell me, Robert, since when does love pay bank accounts? Does love buy mansions? Does love fill the garage with luxury cars? Does it take you to the Maldives or Paris on private jets? Does it buy diamonds? Robert Stone, a man of imposing appearance but tired expression, raised his eyes from his whiskey glass and gave a slight affirmative nod, as if agreeing more to avoid conflict than out of true conviction. Your mother is right. Son, this is a great opportunity for all of us. The girl, Isabella, represents stability and power. A marriage with her means we'll never again face hardship like we just did. It was humiliating to see the Stone name discredited in the market. A union like this would bring back respect, prestige, and security. David walked back and forth in the enormous living room, his gaze lost, his hands in his pockets, visibly impatient. He wore an impeccable dark suit, but his expression was that of someone wearing too heavy armor. His eyes were red, perhaps from stress, perhaps from something deeper. He suddenly stopped in front of his parents and spoke firmly. I've already asked. Please, stop this. I don't have the head to think about marriage, about personal alliances, about matrimonial strategies, about commercial agreements. Yes, we need to strengthen ties with the Davis family. That's essential for the company, I agree. But this dinner is strictly professional. Only that. Please, respect that. Eleanor let out an exasperated sigh. She turned her face and murmured more to herself than to others. Romanticism at this point. Where did we go wrong? The festive atmosphere, though apparent, concealed a tension that grew with each passing second. The clinking of glasses, the footsteps of employees on the white marble, all seemed like a staged performance. No one there knew, no one even imagined, that behind the double doors of that mansion, history was about to turn upside down. David said nothing more. He returned to the living room window and watched the cars beginning to approach. His stomach churned, as if his whole body was trying to warn him of what was to come. The name Isabella brought no echo to his heart. The name that resonated in his mind like an obsessive whisper was another. Julia. She never left his thoughts, not for a day, not for a night. Even in moments of greatest anger or wounded pride, even when he tried to hate her, there was love. A love that hurt. A memory that burned. And now, everything mingled in his soul like a storm about to break. Had she moved on? Was she with another man? These questions gnawed at him, but he swallowed the pain like someone slowly swallowing poison every day. And there, on that night, illuminated by crystal chandeliers, silk carpets, and false voices of celebration, no one was prepared for what awaited them. Because what was about to cross those doors was not just an illustrious visit. It was the past, the secret, the woman, and the justice that came with her. And then, as if destiny had decided to mark that moment with touches of irony, the firm and ceremonial voice of the butler echoed through the imposing columns of the stone mansion, muffling the last soft chords of the violins. Mr. William Davis and his daughter, Isabella Davis. Time stopped. David, who was still facing the darkness of the night by the window, immersed in a whirlwind of thoughts and memories that bled from within, heard the words like muffled thunder. His body reacted before his mind understood. He turned slowly, as if something pulled him by the soul, and then he saw them there, in the center of the immense, impressively decorated living room, under the glare of the lights and the gaze of everyone. William Davis, in an impeccable dark suit, hard eyes, and a steel posture. And by his side, arm in arm with him, the woman who was never forgotten, Julia. The impact was devastating. David felt the ground give way, his heart pound, the air escape his lungs. Julia. There was no doubt, no shadow of uncertainty. It was her. Her eyes, her way of walking, her head slightly raised as if defying the world. But there was something new. She carried a different glow in her gaze, a mixture of contained pain and power. She was no longer the naive young woman who had left. She was a woman, a transformed woman. David took a step back. His mind screamed that it was impossible. Daughter? Julia is Isabella? Daughter of William Davis? No, it can't be. His head spun. The truth hit him like a gale. By his side, Robert Stone, until then excited by the arrival of the investors, rose from his armchair with a wide smile on his face, ready to welcome the powerful businessman. But as soon as his eyes landed on Julia, his smile vanished, slowly, as if his very face refused to accept the truth. He blinked several times, but the image remained there, firm and vivid. The same girl he, years ago, had dismissed with harsh words and cold orders, was now presented as the legitimate daughter of his new partner. But the biggest shock was to Eleanor. The socialite, haughty, sarcastic, and always in control, was in the midst of another of her bitter criticisms when the name Isabella was announced. With a dry martini in her hands, she was still laughing at her own ironies when she looked towards the living room entrance. Her eyes fixed on the young woman who had just entered, and for an instant, everything stopped. The glass slipped from her well-manicured fingers and shattered on the white marble with a sharp, piercing sound. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Eleanor staggered as if she had been punched in the chest and fell onto the sofa, awkwardly, without any trace of elegance. Her mouth agape, her eyes beaming. There, in front of her, was the young woman she had judged, threatened, humiliated, whom she had forced to disappear, to erase any trace of her existence from her son's life. The girl to whom Eleanor had coldly said that she should have an abortion, that she would never be worthy of a stone. The same young woman she had tried to destroy, now returned, not as the poor, nameless girl from before, but as the heiress to the Davis Empire, as William's only daughter, as the majority partner of Stone Corporation. Julia met the matriarch's gaze with the bearing of someone who carries deep scars in her soul, but no longer bleeds. She knew exactly the effect she would cause. Every step to this point had been planned. Every word that would still be spoken, rehearsed with precision. But the feeling that dominated her at that moment was not hatred. It was justice. "Good evening," she said, with a slight smile, her voice firm, controlled, but laden with meaning. "Thank you for the invitation. It's an honor to be here again." William looked at her with pride, crossing his arms imposingly. His gaze swept over each of the stones like a sentence. Eleanor, still in shock, whispered almost voicelessly, "This isn't possible. You can't be." But she was. It was real. The disowned daughter, the despised woman, the mother of the grandchild they denied. She had returned, and from that moment on, nothing would ever be the same again. What is the most powerful aspect of Julia's grand entrance and transformation? How does Eleanor and Robert's reaction to Julia's true identity underscore their past cruelty and their current downfall? Share your insights in the comments. A son's truth, a family's reckoning. The silence was interrupted by a soft sound of footsteps behind Julia and William. A woman appeared, a nanny. In her arms, a small, blonde child with intense eyes, and David's same intense gaze. Julia turned. She took the child carefully and hugged him, protecting him like a treasure. Her eyes were moist, but her expression was firm. And it was then, amidst the widespread astonishment, that she spoke with the strength of someone who had carried truths for too long. "This is my son, our son, David, William Jr., your grandson, Mrs. Stone, and Mr. Stone. Your William G." Those words cut through the air like a blade. David took a step back, his face pale, his hands sweating. The world seemed to spin in slow motion. Everything inside him pleaded for it not to be true. But the child, that child, was a reflection of himself. As if time had gone back and returned his childhood in the form of flesh, bone, and blood. It was as if he were looking at himself there, in the arms of the woman he never stopped loving. I... He tried to speak, but his voice failed. "What's happening here?" The words came out trembling, like a desperate whisper. He brought a hand to his chest, feeling his breath hitch. Tears began to roll, uncontrollable. Eleanor remained slumped on the sofa, her hands covering her mouth, her eyes still fixed on William Jr. Panic was visible in her expression. She knew that at that moment, everything she had tried so hard to hide was coming to the surface. The blackmail, the threat, the abortion attempt, the Machiavellian plan to keep Julia out of her son's life. Now, everything was about to be revealed, and her carefully constructed world of lies and control was crumbling. David, crying, walked unsteadily towards Julia. "Julia, for God's sake!" His voice was rough, desperate. Can you explain? Is it true? I have a son?" Julia looked deeply into his eyes. Emotion overwhelmed her, but she remained firm. "Yes, David, this is our son. The son you never knew because you were taken from him. Because while you were in a coma, your mother went to the hospital and threatened me. She said that if I didn't disappear, she would destroy me, my unborn child, my life. I was alone, scared, pregnant, and without you. I had no choice. I left. I lived on the streets. I went hungry. I slept outdoors, carrying a child in my arms until my father found me and took me in." The room fell into a new and heavy silence. All eyes turned to Eleanor. She didn't say a word, but her silence screamed. It screamed guilt. It screamed shame. David fell to his knees. The convulsive sobs of a man who loved, lost, was deceived, and now found everything that should never have been taken from him. His son, his woman, his truth. And at that instant, corporate alliances, mansions, cars, prestige no longer mattered. Everything that truly had value was there, in front of him, and had been stolen by the one who claimed to love him most. And nothing, absolutely nothing, would ever be the same again. What is the most emotionally impactful moment of this grand revelation for David Stone? How did Julia's powerful words expose Eleanor's cruelty and finally reveal the truth of David's son? Share your insights in the comments. David's words echoed like thunder on the luxurious walls of that mansion. His tone was not one of simple shock. It was the explosion of pain accumulated over years, stifled beneath layers of manipulation, lies, and absence. He was on his knees, but his words carried the weight of someone finally breaking free from the invisible chains of a dark past. The man who had been deceived, the son who had been used, the father who had been kept away, was reborn at that moment in front of everyone. "How could I have been such an idiot?" he whispered, his voice choked with pain. "I believed my mother's wickedness. I believed that you, Julia, had abandoned me while I was in a coma in the hospital after risking my life to save yours in that accident. She poisoned me against you, and I, blind, Let the love of my life go." Tears streamed uncontrollably, mixing rage and shame. David shook his head violently, as if trying to shake off his own thoughts. "What a shame!" It was William Davis, his father, Julia's father, there with her that day, when David saw her. "And I thought I was crazy. I judged. I accused. I didn't seek to know. I didn't try to understand. I saw you and let jealousy blind me. Forgive me, Julia." He looked up, directly at her. "Forgive me for everything. I never forgot you. I always loved you. But I was weak, I was foolish, I was blind." At that instant, William's firm, sharp voice broke the silence like a knife cutting through flesh. "You are a coward, David." His gaze was hard, merciless. "You chose to believe your mother's lies instead of fighting for my daughter's love. You didn't value the woman who truly loved you. You didn't see what she faced because of you." David suddenly stood up. His tear-stained face gave way to eyes inflamed with fury. His gaze sought Eleanor's, as if for the first time he was truly seeing the woman she was. Not the idealized image of a loving mother, but the true Eleanor Stone. Cold, controlling, and destroying futures. "Mother, how could you?" His voice was low, but firm as steel. "You're a monster." Eleanor recoiled a step, as if the words had the weight of a punch. Robert, who had always lived in his wife's shadow, remained motionless for a few seconds. But now, perhaps for the first time in his life, he faced his own guilt. "Son," he said, his eyes downcast. "I didn't know. I swear by all that is sacred, but I am also guilty. I kept silent. I became complacent. I let your mother go too far, and that destroyed all of us." David walked to the center of the room. The once elegant and silent atmosphere now seemed like a stage of tragedy. "I can't stay in this house. I can't continue living under the same roof as a woman who tried to disappear my son and drove away the woman I love." Eleanor, at last, collapsed. The woman who had always imposed herself with authority and haughtiness, who dictated orders with a glance, was now kneeling on the floor, imploring with desperate eyes, her hair disheveled, her hands trembling. "No, no, my son. Please, forgive me. I always wanted your good. I always wanted the best for you." David looked at her with disdain and pain. His words now came like arrows, certain and implacable. "My good. You made my father and me two puppets. You played with our feelings, manipulated everything and everyone to satisfy your pride. You destroyed my family before it even began." Robert bowed his head. The weight of his own mistakes silently dismantled him. He knew that by allowing Eleanor to go so far, he had become an accomplice to that destruction. A devastating silence spread through the room, interrupted only by Eleanor's stifled sobs. Julia, her eyes moist, hugged her son tightly. Beside her, William observed everything with a mixture of indignation and compassion. They knew that that moment, however painful it was, had to happen. It was the reckoning. It was the truth, finally, screaming louder than any lie. David took a deep breath, controlling his tears. He turned to his mother, still kneeling. "Forgiveness is not just for me that you must ask, Mother." He pointed to Julia, who was now holding back her tears. "The one who suffered most from this whole story was the woman you despised, and my son, who was deprived of knowing his father because of your cruelty." He pointed to the little boy, who was now watching everything in silence, as if he already understood the gravity of what was happening. "Ask for their forgiveness, because from today on, I will not stay another minute in this house. I am leaving with my family, the true one." Those words were the final blow. Eleanor, until then, powerful, completely disintegrated. She fell to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably, like someone stripped of all their masks. The irony of fate was cruel. The woman who rejected Julia as a daughter-in-law now wanted her as Isabella, not knowing that she and Isabella were the same person. And worse, fate wanted that girl she had kicked out with such disdain to be the mother of her only grandson. Eleanor, defeated, looked up at Julia. I know there's no forgiveness for what I did. But still I ask you, Julia, forgive me. Forgive me for all the harm. I was blind with pride, with ambition. But now I see all that I destroyed. Forgive me. Julia remained silent for a moment. Her eyes shimmered with tears still held back. She hugged her son to her chest and whispered, Who decides if there's forgiveness is not me. It's time. And time, Mrs. Stone, is unforgiving with those who play with others' lives. David walked to Julia, wrapped her in an intense, protective embrace. He kissed her forehead, held their son tightly, and without looking back, walked out of that room for the last time, leaving behind the wreckage of a lie, and walking towards the truth. The past had exacted its price, but love now would have the opportunity to start anew. What is the most devastating consequence of Eleanor's past actions for her and the Stone family? How does David's decision to leave with Julia and their son, and his final words to Eleanor, mark his complete emotional emancipation? Share your insights in the comments. A love reborn, a legacy forged upon leaving the imposing doors of the Davis mansion. It wasn't just the silence that was left behind. It was an entire era of pain, lies, and lives that had been controlled by an authoritarian matriarch and an absent father. The air outside felt lighter, as if by taking that final step out of that house, David, Julia, and William had left behind the invisible chains that for years had held them captive to an unhappy past. David, with his son in his arms, held him with a delicate strength, as if to compensate in seconds for all the years of absence. His eyes were red, still marked by the intensity of the storm he had just lived through. But there was also something new in his gaze. Peace, a kind of hope that he hadn't allowed himself to feel in a long time. At the door, David turned to Julia, and, his voice choked with emotion, extended his free hand to her. Their eyes met like two souls that had survived an emotional earthquake. Please, Julia, he said with a trembling but firm voice, give me another chance. Now without lies, without influences, just me, you, and our son. Marry me. Let's give him the family I didn't have, that we didn't have. Time seemed to stop. The wind blew softly, as if the universe itself held its breath, waiting for the answer. Julia felt her heart clench. In front of her was the man she had loved so much, who had been brutally torn from her, but who was now there, stripped of pride, wounded, yes, but remorseful, and, above all, willing. She then looked at her father, William Davis, who accompanied them in silence, a man who had once hardened his heart, but who had also been transformed by the unconditional love of a warrior daughter. He didn't say a word, just made a gentle gesture with his head, a nod that said, Go, I'm with you. Julia smiled with moist eyes, the smile David hadn't seen in so many years, a smile that carried promises of healing, of new beginnings, of real love. Yes, she whispered. Yes, David, I accept. Let's start over. David smiled like a man who had just received divine forgiveness. He enveloped Julia in a tight embrace, held their son against them both. And there, amidst the ruins of the past, the foundation of a new story was laid. What is the significance of David's marriage proposal to Julia in front of William and their son? How does this moment symbolize a complete break from his past and a commitment to building a new family based on truth and love? Share your insights in the comments. Days later, The Davis mansion was completely different. There was no ostentation, no photographers, or reporters. Julia didn't want spotlights or curious onlookers trying to understand why her in-laws weren't present. For her, this celebration was more than a social event. It was a silent, intimate, and powerful reconstruction of something that had once been broken. The wedding was simple, but laden with meaning. White flowers decorated the garden, small tables arranged with care, guests hand-selected, true friends, people who loved the couple not out of interest, but for who they truly were. Julia wore a light lace dress, with details that recalled the time she dreamed of marrying David. But this time, the dream became reality. David, in a light suit, holding his son's hand throughout the ceremony, couldn't hold back his tears. Looking at Julia, walking towards him, he felt that even with everything they had lived through, destiny, tortuous as it was, had given them a second chance. The justice of the peace joined them under the blessing of the clear sky, and when he pronounced, "You may kiss the bride," the kiss was long and emotional, interrupted only by the small laughter of their son between them, who seemed to understand that finally his parents were together. William Davis, standing by his daughter's side, observed the scene with moist eyes. There was a mixture of pride and regret in him. He saw in David a reflection of the man he himself had once been. Young, in love, impetuous. But unlike him, David would have a chance to do everything differently, to be present, to love without fear. And that was exactly what William saw that day. The birth of a family. A family built from the fragments of pain, but held together with the cement of forgiveness and true love. At the end of the afternoon, as the sun set, David lifted his son onto his shoulders. Julia clung to her father's arm, and together they walked through the mansion garden, now silent, but full of new meaning. Life had come full circle, faced storms, created walls, but in the end, love won, as it always wins, even when all seems lost. And for David, Julia, their little child, and William, that was just the beginning. What is the significance of the simple wedding ceremony, held without pomp or grand social display? How does William's reflection on David's journey reveal a profound change in his own perspective on life and love? Share your final reflections. This is not just a love story. It's a story of rebirth, of a love that survived pain, lies, abandonment, of a reunion between souls who never stopped loving each other. And when the truth finally came to light, it not only healed the wounds, but rebuilt a family. Because true love never forgets, never gives up, and always finds its way back. And so, what do you think of this story? Did Julia do well to forgive David? Leave your opinion below in the comments. Hugs, and see you in the next story.